Hello everyone and welcome to your horoscope for the week of September the 4th till 10th, 2023. We have quite a dual week ahead of us in the sense that there are going to be elements, themes in our lives that we do feel that we're making really important progress with. But on the other hand, there are going to be other themes which will feel like time has totally stopped for us, and we might be feeling a certain kind of deep inner frustration of why haven't I achieved the breakthrough yet? Why haven't things changed profoundly yet? These very delicate why not yet kind of questions. So let us get into the astrology straight away because at the very beginning of the week, we have quite an intense energy playing out because so very many things are happening simultaneously. Well, the very first thing is Venus. Venus on the 4th of September is finally going direct. Of course, symbolically speaking, because in reality, she is not really moving all that much. She's basically standing still in the sky and trying to go forward, trying to go direct. So her symbolism is very much amplified. And this is where whatever this Venus retrograde season, Venus retrograde entered into shadow in mid-June, if I'm not mistaken, and the retrograde officially began somewhere in the middle or towards the end of August. So those themes that were highlighted on our lives, of course, Venusian themes here, depending on where this Venus falls into your personal chart in the sign of Leo, these themes are going to be once again illuminated, highlighted. We are going to be feeling them very, very deeply. Is it something that has to do with love? Is, of course, well, this was like a trick question because with Venus, it's all about love. But love has so very many different kinds of expression, value, money, well-being, romance, sensuality, erotica, and the list can continue ad infinitum. So, yes, I'm really, really sorry, but a Mercury retrograde element already took place where my microphone fell off. So I'm really sorry about that. So going back to Venus, so what was the main theme of this Venus retrograde playing out in your life? What was, in a very intense way put under the question mark? Was it a relationship? Was it career? Was it a relationship with a person? Was it a hobby? Was it the inner child? Was it your creativity? And I'm so sorry to be this boring and, having to read up the list, but all of these themes can play out. And sometimes for some of us, it doesn't even have to be exclusive. It can be all of these at the same time. So we are not totally out of the woods yet because Venus, as I said, is still pretty much standing still. And all throughout the week, she's not moving all that much. So this just means that whatever wisdom, whatever personal knowledge, personal understanding we cultivated under this Venus retrograde is being highlighted. We are feeling it. It is there in our awareness. It is there within our hearts very, very intensely so that we can build on it, so that we can actually make choices and decisions based on it. So Venus still needs quite a lot of time until she totally exits shadow, but that will be the theme for a different horoscope because this week she's not doing all that much yet the wisdom and basically the um, impetus, that is what matters the most because the truth is crystallizing within our hearts, within our creative centers, passion centers, etc., etc. And also, whatever might have been triggered as an, let's say, external event under this Venus retrograde season who we met, who came back from the past, what came back from the past, what came back from our own unconscious sometimes. Because when Venus started going back, when Venus was standing still in the sky, preparing to go backward, she held quincunxes with Pluto and Neptune. So that was the yacht formation. That was the finger of God pointing it at exactly whatever it is that we need to take a very, very deep look at. And sometimes the people or the elements returning from the past were not actually, very personal. Maybe the universe, your own unconscious, wasn't telling you what to do with that person, with that hobby, with, whatever. That was just a symbol for you to look at why the dynamic of that relationship, why the dynamic of the job, of whatever you loved, played out the way it did, and to draw an important. So sometimes the person, whatever was brought up from the past, was merely just a symbol that led you to the greater truth that you might be actually feeling even in this present moment. Because today, on the 3rd of September, when I'm recording this, Venus is actually also standing still in the sky, preparing to go forward tomorrow. Just that she is just preparing, not moving all that much yet. And also, another very important planet, Mercury, at the very beginning of the week, you can see Mercury here. It is retrograde, of course. So we are in the middle of working with our own personal Mercury retrograde themes. But in the sign of Virgo, it is very much different than the Venusian theme. This is practical. This is problem solving. This is dates and times and communication, paperwork, travels, what we really work, of course, a lot of work and career and service issues might be here. So we are in the middle of not just figuring that out, but trying to, work with the theme, work with the flow, do our very, very best. But we might have quite a fortunate moment because, as you can see, Mercury is trining Jupiter. So that might be lucky, that might be fortunate, that might be where we feel our truth very, very strongly. We know our value, something, especially Taurian elements are crystal clear within us. And we are trying to apply that wisdom because Jupiter ultimately translates into wisdom. That is Jupiter's greatest virtue, if that makes sense. And in the sign of Taurus, that wisdom has to be embodied. We need to do something with it, something earthly, something practical, something that serves us for the very long term, because that is the nature of the sign of Taurus. And you can see it on my screen, but let's play a little game of imagination. The moon is at 10 degrees of Taurus, which means on the same day it will conjunct Jupiter. The moon likes being in the sign of Taurus. The moon conjunct Jupiter can expand the feeling, can expand our sense that we are heading towards breakthrough. And when I say breakthrough, of course, this is not all that new and fresh, not something totally different, but breakthrough with the Mercury retrograde theme in our lives. And as I said earlier, in the sign of Virgo, that's very practical and very, very much needed. Is it health issues? Is it some medical tests? Because the sign of Virgo can rule that in a very, close way. Is it job? Is it finances? Jupiter. Is it things, dates, times, projects with our work, how we are evolving, something that we need to complete, something that ultimately will reward us, even financially. So we might be feeling that we are actually on the right path. We are going towards breakthrough. We're almost there. We're on the right path. But I know it's a trine, and a trine is a supremely harmonious aspect, but Jupiter is expensive. The moon loves being in the sign of Taurus, and when these two planets meet, this can cause a little bit of exaggeration. Yes, it is grounded in a sort of personal wisdom and truth, of course. And Jupiter is also the planet of justice, planet which influences the course of the law. So the law might favor us, legislation might favor us, institution, an organization, any kind of component of the state might be promising us solutions, but let us not give into false hope. Let us not, take it slowly, steadily, and not work ourselves up into something unrealistic, because it will lead ultimately to disappointment. And the disappointment, Venus, even though not precisely yet, but she does square Jupiter, which means she squares the moon as well. And that can, in certain ways, mean disappointment. So let us, embody the energy of Virgo, and let us, be balanced about it. Optimism, hope, and the sense that we're getting there is absolutely wonderful. We do need it. We need it like air, but let's not magnify it way too much. Let's stay grounded in realism, because ultimately that is the greatest wisdom Jupiter can bestow upon us in the sign of Taurus. But the other planet that I need to speak about, which also makes something very, very important at the very beginning of the week, is actually Jupiter. Jupiter is standing still in the sky. Yes, and preparing to go retrograde. Now, Jupiter won't be moving all that much this week either, just as Venus, but we are definitely going to be feeling Jupiter's retrograde. So Jupiter goes retrograde on the 4th of September and ends the retrograde on the 30th of December. So this is the time window, but because it's standing still in the sky, its symbolism is magnified, and usually the shadow expression is highlighted here. And the shadow expression is exactly what I said earlier. When we believe something in a radical way and it disappoints us, or when we, amp up something in such a way that it becomes totally unrealistic, totally ungrounded in reality. Let me give you a really appropriate example here. Jupiter in the sign of Taurus, especially that it trines Mercury retrograde. So technically both these planets are retrograde. Their symbolism is internal more than external. You get positive feedback. You're good at something. Your plan is working. You are wise. It is coming together beautifully. But what you can do with that energy is, be patient and go with the flow steadily. A little bit also with a state of surrender, if you know what I mean, because Jupiter, divine. What the bad thing that you can do is believe that a miracle is coming, that it's gonna be so very good, that it might be, absolutely, but this is where don't be overconfident or promises. Jupiter loves promises. An institution promises you something. It's legally binding, isn't it? But the timing, the way it manifests, the way it's dished out might be disappointing if you work yourself up to unrealistic expectations. Or, as I said previously, you receive you're so good at, you're a good professional. You're good at something that you do. Your plans are working. Now, the bad thing is to believe that, like, you're the best of the best and you cannot go wrong. Your plan is safe and sound and it will execute the way it's intended, like clockwork. Again, that chances are that will disappoint. So with Jupiter here, we must really take into consideration that it tries to amplify, magnify, expand everything in a kind of unrealistic fashion. So, we need to take things slowly. The other planet that just freshly went retrograde is Uranus, and it hasn't moved all that much yet. So its symbolism is still very intense. And we could see Uranus play out on the world stage in so very many ways: accidents, triggers, etc., etc. All you need to do is just, tune into the news, but of course not the mainstream media news, not the news channel, because chances are that's so highly Neptunian that you only see a certain version of events, not necessarily the truth. But whatever happened, happened, the explosion, the accident, this and that. So and the unusual weather phenomenon that are basically appearing everywhere: the storms, the hurricanes, the earthquakes, floods, other places, the forest fires, especially Greece. And really, my heart goes out to everyone in Greece who is suffering from that, because it's really intense. But the North Node in fire sign conjunct planetoid Aries, goddess of discord, and they're squared by Pluto. The square is not exact, but it is what it is, unfortunately. But we must also look at the other side, the wisdom here. Well, forest fires are nature's way to purge herself. When I don't even know what to compare it with. We have a cold, or we suffer from kind of illness, and the medicine, well, it is either very unpleasant, or it requires us to suffer through something. Maybe the side effects of the medicine are quite intense, diarrhea or fever or irritation, or, especially with paracetamol, for example, or ibuprofen, it can cause very intense heartburn, stomach burn. So this is nature's way of regenerating herself, of purging herself, or balancing out certain ecosystems. And we must understand that from nature's perspective, it's not malevolent. From our perspective, it's very scary, But I don't believe that this is where nature wants to punish us. It is intended, again, our homes or are just there, but nature has to do her own thing to keep herself balanced. Just when we fever is usually our body's attempt to fight off infection, for example, because some microbes are much more weakened when the temperature is higher. Nature is just, we are nature, we're also nature, you know what I mean? So, this Uranus and Aries is so similar to Uranus. But anyway, resuming, and let's get to one of the other positive elements. So Venus standing still, preparing to go direct, also trines Chiron. Of course, the trine is not exact yet. Venus still needs to move quite a lot forward on her shadow path for this trine to be exact. But this is where we're already getting the theme that love heals, healthy love. And this is exactly the Venus retrograde theme in Leo. What is healthy love? What is healthy measure? And Black Moon Lilith in the sign of Leo highlights everything that is unhealthy. And she trines the North Node and Aries. And that trine, well, it is a blessing, but it might not feel as a blessing because it highlights everything that is unhealthy, or it highlights how to achieve something that we desire in a radical, in a not very healthy, not very balanced way, inviting us to balance it out. Because on first hand, the symbolism is just, a hint. She doesn't dish out her most extreme manifestation. But the symbolism should be enough for us. When we snap, when we get angry, when something within us just brews, jealousy, or I don't know, envy, or a lot of other elements which can be associated with Black Moon Lilith. But that is just the hint. If we do not act upon it and we try to analyze it, why, when we answer ourselves why, now that is profound wisdom. That is already when we achieved a very strong moment of self psychoanalysis, because it will tell us something about ourselves, our relationship to others, our weaknesses, our, psychological imbalances, deficits, and that guides us to healing. Because once we understand the unconscious, again, Black Moon Lilith this week holds a quincunx both with Neptune, and if I'm not mistaken, the quincunx with Neptune is exact by the degree and also by the minute. And then a quincunx links together two areas of life which have nothing to do with each other. So whatever happens, whatever manifests, may be outside of our sphere of control, even our sphere of awareness. We did not expect it, we were not prepared for it, but there is a lot of wisdom there. Us searching for the wisdom, searching for the meaning, and usually it's not spiritual meaning, but here with Neptune, it can also be a touch of spiritual. It can also be a touch of deep psychological, what bubbles up from our unconscious, what heavy feeling usually, Lilith. But there's also Pluto in the sign of Capricorn. So this is where whatever we perceive as authoritarian, even if it's not, it's just a perception. For example, a colleague, let's say a colleague, tries to give you certain kind of advice and you snap. And you might just, oh, I snapped, I'm a bit stressed out. But you might want to ask yourself, why did I snap? Is just a colleague. And they were actually good intended. They didn't want to boss me around, so why did I snap? And then you psychoanalyze, and you get to the memory that maybe at the very first job or when you were young, you had a really, really horrible boss who made you feel worthless, who bossed you around despite the fact that you were actually quite valuable and you did a very, very good job, let's say like that. You respected everything and they still weren't satisfied because, capitalists. And then you identify the trauma that whenever life gets you in a position where someone tries to boss you around and criticize, Virgo energy, criticize you, or you perceive it as criticism, the trauma activates, you snap. There we have the symbolism of Pluto, symbolism of Neptune, symbolism of Chiron, symbolism of Venus and Mercury retrograde in the sign of Virgo. So all of this cocktail together, but where does that lead you? To heal your trauma, not to snap anymore, to be understanding with yourself, and to be a good parent to yourself and explain to you that that boss was a horrible, capitalistic, soulless, I'm so sorry to judge, person. And it is a natural part of life. Because ultimately, without such criticism or without such negative events that we are subjected to, or Jupiter retro injustices in our lives, we would lack a certain kind of motivation. Sometimes someone who is truly powerful, truly skilled, truly masterful, truly devoted and dedicated to a work, a passion, a hobby, a study, or whatever. Because Pluto in Capricorn can be also teacher, parent, government, any authoritarian figure. Without that, we wouldn't be who we are today, because sometimes it's exactly injustices that make us go much deeper within ourselves than we would otherwise. And that means when we're faced in life with situations which do need our mastery, but they also need much more than mastery. For example, self-discipline or courage or bravery or believing in yourself when reality says not really otherwise, but when reality discourages you greatly. Those are the skills that would not be within you active without certain traumas or injustices. So again, these retrogrades really ask us to tap into our wisdom, our understanding, and because, apart from Mars, all of the planets are not really moving. They're very, very either slow. Most of them, except Venus, are retrograde. So this is where memories, what happened in the past, especially the outer planets, because the outer planets are heavily karmic. So the wisdom has to serve us whatever we harvest here for the rest of our lives, or at least for a very, very long time. Minimum 12 years with Jupiter, because Jupiter will return here in 12 years' time. So you know what I mean. So wisdom, a lot of wisdom, a lot of understanding, and the frustration that we might feel, because frustration goes hand in hand when almost everything in the sky is retrograde or standing still or not moving into new territory except Mars. But Mars is in, detriment. So Mars is in its opposite sign. So even if it doesn't want to, it has to be considerate, diplomatic. It needs to take into consideration the needs, the etc. of others. If it doesn't, then the South Node in Libra will be sure to terminate or modify considerably the relationship or the connection. But where I want to go with this is that even Mars is not having the easiest of time, especially at the very beginning of the week, because Mars holds a kind of, quincunx with Saturn. The quincunx is not precise, not exact. Mars has already moved out of the precision, but on Monday we can still feel the heavy frustration, because Saturn in the sign of Pisces is very, very authoritarian spiritually and psychologically. This is where we just cannot bypass certain things because of that Saturn there. Neptune, on the other hand, would have us deluded, because Neptune, especially at the very end degrees of Pisces, is more delusion than, the spirit, and you know where I'm going with this. So Saturn is, even if it feels incredibly frustrating, even if it feels like, where has my magic gone? Where has my optimism gone? Where has my, Piscean vibe gone? Well, it isn't gone. You're just also invited to use it in a more realistic way. So it isn't gone. You just need to adapt to it. Because if you ground yourself into at least a touch of reality, then it is actually a very, very powerful tool. For example, the advice you give to another will be rooted in much deeper wisdom than just, oh, everything's gonna be okay. Don't worry, you've got this. Those can feel so empty under this Saturn. Now, if you infuse it with a lot of love and you say it that you care passionately about the person, that's another situation totally. But if we just, oh, it's gonna be okay, oh, it's not gonna go well. So we actually need to be very grateful for the Saturn because it is trying its hardest to block out the delusions of Neptune. Now, artists, on the other hand, can tap into this deeply because an artist can translate any kind of illusion, delusion, etc., into a wonderful artistic work, into something, you know, the likes of Picasso. It can be infinitely absurd, but the value is definitely there. So anyone who is an artist and can give a shape and form to this Neptunian activity here is very, very, very fortunate. May it be poetry, painting, music, anything basically. But on the other hand, we must also be very grateful for the Saturn because next year Neptune is gonna reach an erratic position, and that is a very, very, very difficult energy. More difficult than anything, my personal opinion. So this just prepares us, and even this Venus retrograde prepares us for that, you know, because an erratic Venus, an erratic Neptune is Venus's higher octave, can make us believe in love and basically anything in a delusional way, totally delusional. So the Saturn is really, really doing us a massive, massive favor. And please excuse me, I need to mention something which might not have anything to do directly with this horoscope, but Saturn in the sign of Pisces, as tough, as strict, as grounding in a not so nice, frustrating way. It is, we must be grateful because there is this spiritual misconception out there. The universe is just frequency. It just reacts to our thoughts. If we keep it positive, we have to get positive back. Now, technically speaking, from a quantum perspective, that is absolutely true. I can't comment anything on it because it is true, absolutely. But Saturn, you get what you ask for. Because ultimately, the frequency and all of that, that's just a very, very, very superficial layer of the spirit. It has to come from deep truth of the heart, not from the illusion of the deep truth. Neptune, especially in the end degrees of Pisces, promotes the illusion and not the other. You know what I mean? So a lot of us can live, and actually a lot of us are living, but in our own unique, deeply personal ways, in a kind of illusion. And we need to figure out the truth of that illusion, as in the true version of that. Like, in order not to offend anyone, I have to use my own personal example. So, I wanna believe in love. And, the delusion is that love will find me. But the truth is, it will not, because I don't do anything towards that. In the sense that what would Saturn and Pisces require from me? To go to places, to give myself the chance to be seen by someone. You know what I mean? To at least be social, to be humorous, to be Gemini, and I'm not. So me believing in love that miraculously, karmically, it will come into my life is the delusion. And I am, everyone has to believe a little bit of it because otherwise life is really, really sad. But you need to be in reality also that Saturn requires at least some kind of concrete, realistic, actually 3D element to enable fate, karma, spirit, etc., etc. If you know what I mean. So this is where, with this Neptune and Saturn in the sign of Pisces, and these two planets, even you can see in the chart, they're at the two opposite ends of Pisces, the beginning, the end. So we need to get balanced, because the universe is absolutely a frequency and it reacts to what we input into it. And our mindset and our mood and our lower mind, the chat that we have it in ourselves, whatever lower the Gemini program is running within us, that is exactly how the universe is working. And the worst thing is if we force the positivity, force the love, force all of these in knowledge that we're gonna get positive back. We will get positive back, but so superficially, that when we'll have a deep spiritual moment or a deep psychological confrontational moment with ourselves, then it will be kind of as sweet as it was when we got what we wanted, like this, the more bitter it will be. Because, easy come, easy go. And this rule cannot be bypassed by any kind of forced positivity. But true positivity, true optimism is when you understand profoundly your feelings. You understand why you don't have what you need in your life, why you're in a difficult situation, and you persevere. You say, I am going to move forward regardless. And that is the optimism, that you are doing it every second of the day, not bypassing it, because spiritual bypassing and even psychological bypassing is very, very dangerous. And even, these hypnotism where you reprogram your unconscious, there are situations when that is absolutely necessary, but there are situations when we cheat our own inner being, and that won't lead on the long term to anywhere positive, because karma strikes, and karma can only be balanced out with profound wisdom and understanding of the self. And Saturn says in Pisces, but take also action. When we have to suffer something out, when we have to cry it out, when we have to find forgiveness even for apparently the unforgivable, that is what we need to do, and that's not going anywhere with bypassing. The opposite is also true. When we need to court cut and we don't want to, we cannot live in ignorance. You know what I mean? So Saturn is responsibilizing us in a spiritual manner, and what we do with our own psychic abilities. This is where every single human being has a psychic power where they project something on other people. That's very clear how it works, but also in real exactly the frequency. And for example, another very dangerous game to play is to assert your sovereignty with the universe. It works absolutely, but when you will have a moment of surrender, the prayer of serenity won't do anything for you because you asserted yourself. You know what I mean? So there are a degree of assertion, and this is exactly what the North Node conjunct Aries is teaching us quite individually. What is the degree or the measure of assertion where we have to assert ourselves that I need food, I need a bit of pleasure, I need a bit of liberty, I need a bit of something, and absolutely the universe will give it to you. But don't complain, you know what I mean? Because it is not a genie to grant your wishes when you ask to serve your highest good. And this is where I also have to give a personal example, not to offend anyone, there was a time in my life when I so desperately needed money in order to save my mom. And I studied all my life magic and sorcery. So that was my greatest talent, lottery. And I worked hard for it from a metaphysical perspective. And this is where, but I always, always, always said that guide me to my greatest and my highest good. Let not my will be done if it is foolish. And foolish is not necessarily from a human perspective, but from the big picture. And then there was a moment when all the stars, astrology, were aligned. It was time to harvest. And I went, and my intuition screamed at me, don't use your numbers, use random. Now, would I have used my numbers, I would have won the first prize. Absolutely. And you can imagine the shock that my intuition sabotaged me. And I said, how is this? What is this malevolence? What is this? Do you want to kill my mom? Do you want to kill my whole family, basically? But I had to go through years of pain and dark night of the soul to understand that would I have won it, then that would have been my termination and my doom. Like that would have destroyed who I was on a soul level. So basically today, if I'm grateful for something, I'm so, so, so grateful that my wish and my hard work, basically, my sorcery, did not manifest in a classical way. And my intuition was spot on, basically, diverting me and preventing me from that moment when I would have just destroyed my incarnation. Through sheer power, through knowledge, through understanding, through study, through hard work. I ticked all the boxes why the universe should have, given me the frequency that I put into it. And it did, in a way, because I saw my numbers on the screen. You know what I mean? But it also saved me. That was the greatest miracle and benevolence that the divine could have done for me. The greatest, like, I don't know if anything in my whole incarnation surpasses that. And apparently it was a very, very negative event. It was a total failure. Sorry. But it saved me. So this is where we are definitely not wiser, smarter in any way, shape, and form than divine intelligence. But you need that deep soul level trust not to misinterpret, But and even if you misinterpret, keep the trust because it will be revealed to you. I'm so sorry about this long detour. Now let us get back to the horoscope. So let's move on to the 5th. So on the 5th, the highlight is that the moon is conjunct Uranus. Now, in a mercurial sense, this might be quite positive, but keep in mind that this might be a moment of shock, of surprise, sometimes in the present context, not necessarily the pleasant kind, or a deep epiphany realization that kind of makes you change your own plans, change your own timing. So this might be a game changer and you emotionally react to it. Now, on the positive note, this is where many times the game changers on the long term, and when I say long term, this is where towards the end of the week in that sense, because the moon is very quick moving. You might see the wisdom of the change in the plans or feelings or emotions, etc. Now, moving on, on the 6th, this is where I have to show you the dwarf planets as well. It is a very, very important day of the week because we have Mercury conjunct the Sun. So this happens more than once, of course, every year, but this is Mercury retrograde. So this is one of the highlights when information, communication, inner truth, inner understanding, our wit is illuminated, and we are on the right track. It is not just Jupiter, because this Mercury Mercury conjunct the Sun, the Cazimi, is trined by Jupiter. It's not just Jupiter, amplifying our sense of optimism, but this is where we truly see where this Mercury retrograde is guiding us. We see the benevolence. Now, it's not necessarily an easy energy because Mercury is combust. So that can mean a lot of busyness, especially at work, project, last minute changes. But for the more favorable course of events, it can also be a breakthrough, or the path, the trail of breadcrumbs to the breakthrough. And the breakthrough, of course, is going to be in a mercurial sense when Mercury goes direct, and it will trine Jupiter again, and Uranus mostly, because Uranus is Mercury's higher octave. That might be a very, very powerful moment of breakthrough in the sense of this Mercury retrograde season. Mercury stops retrograde on the 15th of September, and after then it will start moving forwards. And fortunately, Mercury is actually quite quick moving, so it won't take Mercury as long as Venus to get out of shadow. So another interesting element is that dwarf planet Orcus is also conjunct this Cazimi. So again, Orcus represents breakthrough. Orcus represents breakthrough in the sense that our creativity, our own inner alchemy, our improvisation skills lead us to, being able to solve any issue that this Mercury retrograde conjures up, either from the more distant past or from the recent past, or of how we are gonna realize our project that we're working on, or wherever this 13th degree of Virgo falls into your personal chart, or the path of the Mercury retrograde. So Orcus is a really, really good element. Needless to say, Orcus also trines Jupiter. So the evolutionary intent of this energy is to actually get you into justice, whatever justice, balance, equilibrium in a Virgo way, practical way means to you personally. And another element is Pallas Athena opposes Neptune. Again, disillusionment. Wisdom needs to be rooted in, practical, earthly, 3D elements, especially in this period. So Pallas Athena opposing Neptune is where we see the wisdom of why things happen, or that wisdom is projected onto us by others, but it's not an easy energy. Like, for example, we understand why something was delayed to next year. It might frustrate us, on a practical level immensely, but on the other hand, we see the wisdom of why something needs to mature, or why we aren't ready for something, like, for example, medical issues, or recovering from a medical issue. Recovery is not like this. You know what I mean? It takes time. It takes, again, taking into consideration the elements of Virgo, change of diet, change of daily routines, change of our rituals, etc., etc. And also actually, it's not at that day, it's later on, but I'll speak about it right now. On the 8th, we have Juno conjunct Venus. Venus already moving forward. So that is a really, really beautiful energy, because Juno is asteroid of partnerships. So to me, this says whatever themes we're wrapping up, whatever Venus retrograde means to us personally, and Venus going backwards on her shadow, forward, sorry, on her shadow path. This is where we're drawing important conclusions and preparing to make choices and leaps of faith. While Leo is the sign of risk taking, leaps of, we are supported by either someone else or something else. Juno, Jupiter's wife. So, moving on. Oh, and Pallas Athena is, I'm so sorry, Quincunx, uh, the North Node. So again, North Node in the sign of Aries conjunct Aries, the head, our sense of direction. We want to rush there like a battering ram to pass all obstacles. Pallas Athena might show us why exactly we might need to take detours, take it slowly, or take a step backwards. You know what I mean? Because the battering ram rushing into a wall, no one guarantees that the ram breaks through. Maybe the ram breaks his head. You know what I mean? So use wisdom given by Pallas Athena. Moving on. So on this day, Orcus is conjunct the sun. This happens every single year, so not all that special, but in the sense of the larger Jupiter retrograde, justice. This is where we truly understand what justice means to us, and in a wise and balanced way, because this is where we're not allowing, or hopefully, we're not allowing to Jupiter to expand it in a radical way. Would Pluto be in place of Orcus? That's radical way. That is where aggressive self-righteousness. Orcus is the anti-Pluto. It has the same effect, but the modus operandi is radically different. This is where we see where self-righteousness has to have limits. You know what I mean? And the other element, this is where Black Moon Lilith is quincunxed the yacht formation by Neptune and Pluto, but I already spoke about this, so I'm going to be moving on. This is the 8th, so on the 8th, we have a very, very fortunate alignment where that sun trines, the sun is trined by Jupiter retrograde, but Jupiter isn't moving all that much, so it's still very shadowy. It's still very, very amplified. But in that sense, this is where we see it's optimistic. It's beautiful. Again, our plans are working. We get good communication. We get promises. We see how we are moving forward with the retrograde themes. So moving forward does not really favor all that much something totally fresh and new, where we are already in a totally different page in our lives, but we see a lot of optimism how we get out of the retrogrades, or how the retrogrades help us already reach profound wisdom and understanding, and that state of understanding and wisdom is the true blessing, because it makes us lucky. Whatever we need to get the retrograde sorted, may it be job, may it be relationship, whatever area this Mercury retrograde falls into your own personal chart, that is where we get lucky, we get breakthrough, we get promises, but chances are these promises are going to be fulfilled one way or another. So this is a really, really good energy. Good energy for everyone looking for a job, everyone who wants to tune up their service, everyone who needs a professional, maybe the best possible professional just falls into your lap, and they are even at a very reasonable price. Why not? So this is one of the really, really fortunate alignments where much later on, and that's next week's horoscope, Uranus will trine the sun. And that's the surprise. That is the actual breakthrough. That is when, let's say, the promise is fulfilled, or anything that didn't work according to our plans. Uranus and the sun trine makes us see that the universe had much, much better plans. So we are grateful for it. Positive, pleasant surprises. And Uranus, the unexpected, also has an element of luck to it. And this is earth energy. So it has to be practical. And at this moment, as you can see, Juno actually conjuncts Venus. So moving on to the very end of the week, sorry. This is where the moon opposes Pluto. So on Sunday, we might have a very, very intense emotional state where either family members or someone very, very dear and close to our hearts may need our help, may need our intervention, or it can also be, opposition usually means confrontation. When we dish our truth, our feelings to the table, they dish their feelings, and something gets done because of this. And also, Vesta in the sign of Gemini does trine Ceres conjunct Haumea. So this to me says family situations, siblings, cousins, the other half, the better half. So family situation, there is going to be a lot of communication. There is going to be a lot of planning. There is going to be a lot of even brainstorming in this context. So also, whatever happens this week is leading up to next week's new moon in the sign of Virgo, which is going to be quite interesting in its own accord. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for all the beautiful comments and all the lovely feedback. I'm so very much appreciated. If you'd like to support my work, you can donate in the PayPal link in the description below. And with this being said, thank you everyone. Until next week. Bye for now. Oh.